Before we get into the CN Tower, though, I just want to ask you a question. Any wine geeks here? People that are really into wine? Okay, next. You are?
I'm taking the W set this year, so I'm trying to be.
Are you taking level 2?
Yeah.
Your instructor is excellent.
Okay.
Melissa Bulvermacher, and any of you thinking of taking the wine and enology course next semester, 40-50? She's an excellent instructor. I know because I taught her. And then I gave her my course. I was having so much fun with that course. Seriously. Although it's hard to screw up teaching booze, right? Like if you mess up, you're a mess. And Joe, God bless Joe, who just retired the other night. God bless him. What a nice guy. What a great instructor. And he made a living teaching booze, which is even better. Okay, quick question though, before we get into the CN Tower. I have two things here. Upon graduation, you are going to work in either a hotel or a restaurant. This is imaginary. You have two choices from your employer. They say you can work the full year, 12 months a year, and make $60,000 and have your 2 weeks vacation. Or you can work 10 months, have a 2-month unpaid sabbatical, which means you can pick 2 months to go travel or do whatever, and you still get your 2 weeks vacation in the 10 months. You have to make a decision. Which would you pick? So I want you to think about it. Would you rather work the full year and have 2 weeks vacation and make 60 grand, or would you rather just work 10 months of the year, have 2 months off, but make significantly $10,000 or less? Who would pick the first one, 50K with 2 months off? And who would take 60? I don't know. Interesting. Who would rather work 5? So you have another choice. You can either work 5 8-hour days in a week, or 4 10-hour days and have 3 days off versus 2. Who would rather work 5 at a shorter shift, 8 hours? Who would rather work longer shift and have an extra day off? That's a little bit more. Okay, cool. Thank you. Aren't John and Cam nice guys? Like, don't you get a sense there? I'd like to work with them. Yeah. What did you think of their presentation? What surprised you, if anything?
I thought they really cared about trying to make a change for kind of that big establishment. Yeah.
And that I don't think that can be oversold. And I hadn't really thought about it, but John was absolutely right in saying, big places, big restaurants or hotels think we're too big to, and he's like I did, he's bucking the trend. Good for him, which is amazing. What else? Yeah, they're looking at trying to make a statement for the industry. Like they're thinking beyond just their own 4 walls. Or I guess when you have a round restaurant, you have 1 wall. Because that's the tower is around, right? So is that right? There's only 1 wall? Just goes around a circle? Yeah. Good point. What else? Anything else? Yeah.
The support that they got from their management team, I was really surprised on.
Yeah, they seem to have a lot of support in this initiative, which is going to play into how we do our work for them.
They're doing it in a way that doesn't compromise against the food.
For sure. That's a really key point. It's as any of your economist profs would say, it's adding value, right? It's looking to create value through these initiatives, not just being sustainable. That's an important point too. Anything else? No, we got one. Yeah.
I was really
Surprised
surprised by
by the numbers?
Yeah, like you know that the same tower has a lot of business.
How many prime ribs, tens of thousands in 3 months and stuff? Like it was mind blowing. It really was. I had lunch with them in maybe May, because it was just going into their busy season. And we talked about this project back in May, and even then I was amazed. We sat for an hour and a half, 2 hours. I was amazed at the amount of people that filled up that room over lunch in May. It was like a Monday in May or something. It was crazy. All right, so I'm going to go through the rubric now, and then we're going to tackle this project. We'll talk about a plan. I think I haven't posted this. You know what? I have a night class on Mondays, and I went home last night and did a bunch of things on that. So I forgot to post this, so I'll post it tonight. And I'll go over it a couple times. This is the rubric we're going to use for CN Tower. 100 marks. 5 marks are answering the question. Did the student show clear understanding of the issue at hand, and was the report focused in answering the question? 5 marks. So that's what we're going to discuss today. What is it they're asking us to do? Right? What's the question? What's the issue? We're going to work on that. So 5 marks in your report for being able to answer what they're asking. Sometimes, and most students get the 5 out of 5. Sometimes students veer off and didn't quite get the question straight. In this case, in this project, I don't think it's going to be that difficult. In the next one, it's not. In the third, it might be a little bit trickier. Research and analysis, I will refer to it as R and A, and then I'll throw in the EBR. What does EBR stand for? Yes, evidence-based research. So by now, you've read your article on evidence-based management, and that's due on Thursday, correct? It's due today? Really?
You can do it Thursday.
Did I say put it in the Dropbox, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it was due today. Or it's due today at lunch or midnight. So did the student use EBR to support their work? Okay. So again, this is the idea of using academic scholarly literature work that supports, wherever we can, supports our recommendations, our thinking. Using that research not only to support what we're recommending, but also to help us in coming up with recommendations. I brought in some additional things that you might consider. This is not evidence-based, it's not on Google Scholar, but these things like food service, this is by Restaurants Canada, 2018 facts, and it talks about trends and different things. This is what we call market data, and it's from a reliable source, so this is good information. This is called a book. It's a book. They open like this. This is the Sustainability Advantage. When I gave you a little talk on sustainability, I quoted this book. This is the 7 business case benefits for triple bottom line. So this sort of, and this is evidence-based, Bob Willard's work. This sort of work is good as well. Was the research and analysis used accurate and appropriate given the direction of the work? So exactly what that says. Was it, on target? Was it accurate? Was it real? Was it appropriate given what we're trying to do? And was the research and analysis presented in an appropriate manner? I am not a APA policeman as far as things like that. And I'm sometimes even forgiving of sentence structure and spelling and things like that. But the one thing that really you need to nail 100% is when you're presenting charts, tables, graphs. You might take a chart from here. Okay. Notice this chart has a title. It's clear. You can read it. Okay? It has a source on where it came from. That's what a chart should look like. Okay? It's not very clear. I can zoom in a little bit for you guys. Don't just put stuff up that doesn't have a title. Don't put stuff up that doesn't have a source. Okay? And make sure I can read it. In years past, I've had students hand in things that they can't read. Last year I had a student who printed their paper and didn't look through the pages, and the printing was all messed up. And I docked them 25%. I allowed them to reprint it, but it was late. I docked them 25% because they didn't check their work. Some of those things are important. All right. So all of that stuff is worth 30%. The recommendation is worth 40. That's the biggest part, is what are you going to recommend that these people do? Did the student's recommendation answer the question posed by the partner? So again, was it focused and on track? Was the recommendation realistic and appropriate given the context? What do I mean by context? We spoke about that at the beginning of the course. What's context? Yeah, relatedness, the situation, the environment, okay? So if you suggest they have a $2 million ad campaign, right? I would say, whoa, well, it's government money, you know, they don't have that much money. Given the context of the CN Tower, they're only one restaurant. You might do that if you're a company. Given the context that it's just one restaurant, that probably wouldn't be good use. So given that context, it wouldn't be appropriate. Was the recommendation supported with the use of R&A? So when I look at your recommendations, they should become almost obvious based on what you've written about research you've done showing, in this case, why it would be beneficial for them to improve their messaging of their sustainability efforts. That's worth 40. Implementation. 20 marks. Did the student present a solid plan for implementation of their recommendations? Did the student consider timing and resource allocation in their plan? Was the implementation plan realistic? So you're going to make recommendations, and then you're actually going to physically have what we call tactics to deliver them. So it might be a new social media platform. It might be tabletop iPads on the tables, messaging the story, right? And you'll list them. And what I mean by timing and by resourcing is you have to explain some idea of who's going to do that. Is it going to be done in-house? Is it going to be done professionally for them? Resource allocation is who's going to do it, how much money approximately would it cost, those sorts of things. And also, usually, and we'll get in this in the last day, I recommend you guys have used Gantt charts, correct? Some sort of project management plan that will talk about priority and timeline, which you're going to do first, which you're going to do second, what you're going to do third, etc. So Gantt charts are always a good way to go. And again, when you hand them in, make sure I can read them and they're clear. And then the format. There is no specific format here. Again, part of this is for you to create a format that you think is appropriate for who you're reporting to. Okay? So that's what we'll talk about today. So you come up with a report. You can go online and look at all the different websites that talk about business reports. Is this going to be a sort of a consultancy report? No, I probably would see it as being an introduction and then a bunch, maybe even a statement of what the project is you're working on for them, what the issue is, what you're trying to do, and then go into a section that is the research that's out there, and then maybe make your recommendations, and then maybe do your implementation plan. Okay, so that's sort of how I would think if I was sitting down on an open document right now, and I would frame it like that. And then, of course, what's the last thing you always do when you write a report like this for people? The last thing you always do, and it's at the front of the report.
Executive summary.
Executive summary. Okay, it's the first thing, and you write it last. And it's a summary of your report. Okay, and why do they call it an executive summary?
Executives are busy, they don't have time to do the whole thing, they only need to
Perfect. Just to reiterate a little louder is executives don't have time to read a 30-page report, so they want to get all the information in a paragraph. And then they might skim through it, okay? And that's how we mark your paper. Joking. You will see scribbles like you've never seen before, and you won't be able to read them, and you'll wonder, what the hell is he trying to say to me? All right. Any questions on the rubric?
Should only provide one recommendation.
Okay, good question. You only need to provide one recommendation. I don't know. I will probably know, and I will think you will know in 2 or 3 more classes when we start getting into this. I would think there's going to be several things, but you may want to package it as one strategy. Okay, so one recommendation on a new messaging strategy for sustainability, and I'm going to deliver it with the use of 4 tactics. Okay, strategy is a plan to get to the future. Okay, so you're here, the CN Tower is here. They want to get to the future where, and the future would be where everyone knows all the great things they're doing with sustainability. Okay, so you come up with a strategy, say that, and to get there, they have to do certain things. Okay, maybe new web page, new social media plan, new iPads, these things, and that will help them achieve their strategy. Different steps. This is a form of strategic management called backcasting. Sort of a fishing term. So this is where, again, you set yourself up here. This is where you are now. You decide where you want to be in the future, and then you deliver tactics that will help you achieve that. So it may be one big strategy with different parts of it. Everyone's will probably be different, and that's fine. There is no answer. Again, these 2 gentlemen came in 5 days ago, posed a question, and they want you to deliver. So I think it's pretty cool. I'm really excited about this one. Any other questions about the rubric? Yes, Courtney.
Are we supposed to be providing any kind of budget or like commenting on numbers at all?
Excellent question. Do you comment on a budget or talk about numbers? Yes. You can't. I don't think you can make a recommendation for something like this without incurring some sort of costs. Your students, you don't have all the information. So when we're doing projects like this, we do 2 things. Let's say someone wanted to put iPads at every table, right? And they would communicate a video when someone sat down about all the great things. That's actually a good idea. So I could probably say, how much is an iPad? You're probably get one for $200 to $300. And we can ask Cam, and there's 80 tables. So you need to produce a video. You can go online and try to figure out how much a production company would charge for a video. Maybe that's $10,000. If you can't find out an exact number, you can make what's called an assumption. Okay, you just have to state that it's an estimate, an assumption, and just mark it down. You can always ask me what you think something will cost. I can ask, again, once a week I can go and ask them questions, but you will have to discuss and consider the cost of things, the financial cost of things. Other questions? Yes?
When you say like the presentation, are we actually presenting this?
No.
Oh.
No. This is just a report. Anything else? All right, so what is it? What is the question here? What are they asking you to do for them? They put some things on the back page, but what is it? Let's nail it down so everyone's on the right track. Gentleman at the back, Max.
I believe they just want to shoot what they did before to the public.
Okay, so they're doing some amazing things in sustainability. Would everyone agree? I actually put up another set of slides on CourseLink that shows the CN Tower's efforts from an energy perspective and from a physical perspective about water usage and energy. Did you guys see that? That's up there as well. So that's just additional. They're doing a lot of things. And like Max said, they want the public to know why they're doing this. All right? Would everyone agree that that's what they're trying to do? No? Joel?
No. I believe that what their problem is that they want to change their reputation.
Okay.
And they are using or trying to connect to sustainability as a mechanism for them to provide us an opportunity to help reshape and reposition them from a reputational perspective.
Okay.
Their efforts from a sustainability perspective, I think, are great, and they are doing lots of goodness, but lots of other restaurants, as you know, have been doing the sustainable efforts for 12 to 15 years. So I heard that there was a need for financial gain or increase in the winter, and a strong desire to change the reputation that they will carry a bias towards their company.
Okay.
So they're as much of the problem as their goal. That's what my thoughts were.
Okay, so we're going a little deeper that the actual, what they're trying to achieve by this, their goal is to improve, change their reputation, their brand, almost rebrand what they are, okay, to you asked a question at the end, Joel, that got a good answer. They're looking to increase their business, you mentioned again, in their slower time, correct? Right? Now, I think Max is correct as well in saying they're going to do it through showing people what they're doing, right? As part of this rebranding, repositioning, their reputation. What is the reputation of the CN Tower or 360, the restaurant? I wouldn't expect you to know, but we touched on it a little bit. What is the reputation? Go for it.
If you look in the basement, they're union,
Yep.
means they're slow as hell, and they are old in crotchety, and the service has been with them for 1 billion years, and it runs like a moderately oiled machine.
Yeah. Okay. It's a almost an assembly line. It's expensive. It's, as Cameron said, and John, it's unionized, which always gives the impression that it's not as good, okay, that the service isn't as good and the standards aren't as high. It has never been known as a destination, okay, for people within the city of Toronto unless they're taking who? Cameron mentioned this.
Like friends and family from outside of the area.
For sure. So the only time I would ever go to the CN Tower right now to eat would be as if my aunt from Scotland came over, right? Or if I was doing business.
You're not that old, but I'm just curious, do you recall a time when, like, the CN Tower was newly built and it was, like, how long did the hype last? How long was there the bang? Like, everyone's like, I gotta go to this big tower, it's the biggest tower.
Yeah. So it would have been built in 73, 4, or 5. I remember being led into a gymnasium at my public school in grade 3 or 4, and they had a TV, a small TV at the front, and we all went in, and they were putting the antenna, the helicopter on to finish the CN Tower, and I was like, wow. And it was like, now we have the biggest building in the world in Canada, and then within 2 years, my parents had taken us up there, and then anyone that came, and I would say there was a good decade of height. Obviously, it's an imposing figure. It's not the largest anymore in the world, but it was the largest for a long time, and it was a huge, huge thing. In fact, just to build on that, Toronto has really tanked from a tourism point of view and a real global reputation as a destination. And I shouldn't say tanked, it's declined, because in the 70s and 80s we had Roy Thompson Hall, we had the CN Tower, the Metro Zoo was built, we had Ontario Place, we had all these things, all the big shows, Rent and Les Miserables and everything that came to town. And so the 90s probably culminated in the 90s, and then nothing really has been, TIFF started back then in the 90s, and nothing really has been done that is shiny and new in Toronto, right, as far as attracting people. So, it's not quite the international destination that it once was. It's been surpassed. It used to, and I don't know if it was, I think it was Marion Job that was presenting something on this. It was actually Tanya McLaurin. But Toronto had once been in the top 10 international destinations for tourists in the world, and now, according to her presentation, we weren't even in the top 50. This is maybe 5 years ago. So anyways, it's not shiny and new anymore. It's had 45 years of what we're talking about, not a stellar reputation. They never had a chef the caliber of John Morris, right? The chef retired. He'd been doing the same job. He wasn't. The food was what we call very pedestrian. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't creative, or it was assembly line. Okay. So let's get back to the question. Change. So Joel mentioned change, and that this sustainability is, I think you used the term mechanism for change, did you? No? So that this idea of being sustainable and being new is something that's going to help them to reposition, improve the reputation, and drive business. Anyone want to build on this? Are we going in the right direction? Are we way off?
I just had another thought of where they want their reputation to be, because they get tourists no matter what. Like in the summer, they put 13-point-something million in sales, and just constant people showing up. But they want that slower period to have extra people come in, and that would be the local market. Mm-hmm. So people for business lunches or anniversaries or whatever else. So I think they have to try and market themselves within the city of Toronto rather than expanding and trying to catch extra tourists, because Toronto's new, or not new, but it's cool, or come back here, or something like that. It's getting the people that are already here to come.
Okay. So almost finding a new market, creating a new market for them as well, and rethinking their markets. What has happened in tourism with food? What has Anthony Bourdain, what did he do for food tourism? And it's called the Bourdain effect, and it's a real thing. Who was, he passed away this year, who was Anthony Bourdain?
He was a famous chef that traveled worldwide and just expanded and took a bunch of documentaries on different food cultures and foods in different countries.
Perfect. So he's had a couple of different series. The most recent, Parts Unknown, and he's very famous for going around and looking at the geopolitical impact, and the socioeconomic impact of food in different countries. He used food as sort of a conduit to ask questions and investigate. And who watches him at all? Anyone? Anyone motivated, thinking that would be cool, going to other countries and checking out? Yeah. And people, he is, millions of people have watched his shows and now travel with food as one of their major reasons for travel. Okay, so they'll go to Copenhagen, right, to experience the Scandinavian food culture. And they'll go to the Copenhagen market and they'll book a table at Noma, the world's best restaurant, and they'll make food the reason for them to go to a place. Okay? So when we think of Toronto and people going to Toronto, is the CN Tower food part of that? Or where do you think, where would you go for good food adventure in Toronto if you were gonna go? Someone other than Joel. Canoe, okay, so one of the established fine dining places. What else?
I was gonna say, if you're looking for something a bit more fine, maybe something in Yorkville, or something trendy like Queen Street, Broad Street, just go to like a small, like new establishment that has like trendy things.
For sure. Okay, so small, independent, out of the way, little areas.
A big one that I would really cool on my friends that I would do is Big Six, is that great?
Okay.
So that's
That would be a big thing, you know, having Drake back you up. Okay. What about Chinatown? What about, I'd go to Chinatown, right? Or go to Scarborough, right? I go to some of the strip malls, the Jamaican strip malls in Scarborough, because you get some of the best, most authentic food. And you can drive down like Warden and see these places, and there's people lined up on a Saturday afternoon, right? Because they have the best jerk chicken or whatever, and it's homemade roti and stuff, and it's like, it's real. And that's what they're sort of competing against for people that are looking for a food destination. So, I'm getting a little off topic there. Let's get back to the issue at hand. Is it about sustainability at all? Hey, what did you mention earlier about what, I think it was you, what they want, what they were trying to accomplish? I think you had said they want to do something for the industry, make statements to the industry and not just themselves, or was that someone else? Oh, that was you, sorry. I had the right direction. Okay, so they were looking to change beyond their own world, their own brand. Do you think they're honest in saying that? Do you think that's their motivation? Part of it? How did John get here?
it sounds like the chef was more into it than the actual general manager.
Yeah.
And so honestly that it was more about numbers for him.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so a little yin and yang there, right? John rode his bike to the train, took the train over to here, to there, to get picked up by Cameron, by carpool, to get to Guelph. He could have drove and been here in 60 minutes, but that's not what he believes in. His personal values are he wants to make a statement to help change other people. And so beyond, you know, just this business side that Cam's very in tune with, okay? Do you think do you think they can play both sides? That if they improve their reputation and reposition and use all these good things they're doing, that will help them, or that will make them a beacon in the industry for